How much money should you be saving for retirement? Most people get this question wrong, and the data backs it up. After all, 50% of Americans aren't saving at all for retirement, and the other 50% that are saving aren't saving enough, and the data supports it. What we're going to look at today are two things. One, what is the average American saved for retirement by age? And this allows you to stack up how you're doing versus the average. And secondarily, at each age, how much money do you need to have saved to make sure that you're a millionaire by retirement? My name is Luke Turner, co-founder of Moment Private Wealth, where we help athletes and entrepreneurs get smarter with their money. Let's dive into today's topic, retirement by age. Let me set the stage for you. So as we are looking at how much you need to be saving for retirement and help to guide you down this path, the first fundamental thing that we need to understand before we talk about the averages by age, how you stack up, how much you should be saving, the one fundamental thing that you need to understand is that the earlier you save, the better off you're going to be. It is the power of compounding, and it is something that everyone talks about, but very rarely do we see people actually implement it. And that is the one theme that's going to flow throughout this entire conversation today as we're looking at how much you need to save at each age group. And what you're going to notice is that if you save early, you have to save significantly less money than if you save later on in life. So is the juice worth the squeeze to sacrifice some of those vacations early on, put some extra money away for retirement? The short answer is yes, if you want to take advantage of compounding. So let's dive in. First age we're going to look at is age 30. So on average, what does a 30-year-old have saved up in retirement? The answer is $49,130, and their average contribution rate is 7%. Okay, so is that a good number? Is that a bad number? What I would tell you is that the most important thing in this early stage, I'll call it pre-30, is that you're building the muscle, you're building the habit of saving. Okay. Now, $47,000 doesn't seem like maybe a ton of money, but what's crazy is the power of compounding. If we look at an example, and we're going to look at this example at every age bracket, if we were planning on retiring at 65 years old, and we averaged an 8% rate of return, which is actually lower than what the S&P 500 has returned over the entire lifespan of the S&P 500, the amount of money that you would need at age 30 to have $1 million at age 65 is $67,634. So what's crazy is, although that $47,000 number doesn't seem like a huge number, with the power of compounding, it almost gets you to be a millionaire at age 65. So that's age 30. Now let's look at the next bracket, age 40. So if you're 40 years old, the average American has saved up $141,520, and the average savings rate is 8%. Now, I think this is a stark comparison and difference to age 30, and it goes back to that habit of building the muscle, and where a lot of people fall into a trap called lifestyle creep. Typically between ages 30 and 40, we start to see bigger jumps in income. And typically then what happens is people start to have families, they start to have, those kids are expensive, they buy a bigger house, their kids go to a different school. There's just a lot of extra expenses out there. And what often happens is people have a set it and forget it mentality around retirement savings, and they don't change the dollar amount that they're saving. They only change they rarely change the percentage, which doesn't move the needle enough on the dollar amount. And we can see this in the difference between 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds. A 30-year-old on average was saving 7%, and a 40-year-old on average is only saving 8%. What we would recommend is starting to look at what is, again, the amount that we need to have saved. So this is the biggest jump that we see. So if you want to be a millionaire at age 65, how much money do you need to be saving at 40 years old? And again, the example here is retiring at 65, 8% rate of return over the course of that time. You need to have $146,000 is $17. Okay. So again, you can see it almost doubles, it over doubles between 30 and 40 when we look at the 67,000 to the 141,000. Really important piece to note there. Now, next age is age 50, and now we're starting to get down the path where as we get older and older and we get closer and closer to that time frame, we need to have a lot more money saved because you don't have nearly the amount of time that a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old does in order to be in a position to have $1 million at age 65. So at age 50, the average is $313,220 saved for retirement. And the average contribution rate is right at 10%. And this does not surprise me here, where we're starting to see a ramp up of that contribution rate. Remember, it's set at 30, it was 7%, at 40, it was 8%, at 50, now it's 10%. Because a lot of people, they're starting to see, or my income continues to go up, I really should start saving a little bit more money here. And I think this is an important thing to note, but again, what I would recommend focusing on is the dollar amount you're saving, not necessarily the percentage. If you're making $2 million a year and you're saving 10% of your income, that's $200,000. If you're making $100,000 in income and you're saving 10%, that's $10,000. It's a stark difference in where it's going to get you from an outcome. So now let's look at our scenario here. If we want to be a millionaire at age 65, we're going to earn that 8% rate of return just like we have at the other age brackets. How much money do we need to have saved at age 50? And the answer is $315,241. But again, the key here is the compounding that you're missing out on. If you remember, if we roll back the clock to age 30, the amount that we needed to save to get that same outcome of $1 million in a portfolio at age 65 was only $67,000. And now if we're at age 50, we need to have $315,000 saved up. So over 5 times the amount of money. Now, last age group, we're quickly approaching retirement, age 60. And I think this is really an interesting one, and it goes to exactly what I had mentioned at the beginning of this video, is that most folks that are approaching retirement really aren't prepared for it, unfortunately. And typically at age 60, there's only so much you can do, because we're talking about a 5-year window now between 60 and 65 to get to retirement. It can be really difficult to close that gap because you can't use the power of compounding. So on average, 60-year-olds in the United States have saved up $537,560. And their average contribution rate is 11%. So again, you can see this over time where we have 7% at age 30, 8% at age 40, 10% at 50, and then 11% at 60. People are being mindful of this, where they're starting to ramp up their savings. But again, if we're saving an extra 1 or 2%, that's a great step in the right direction. But we really need to understand how much in dollars we're actually saving, where that percentage only moves the needle so much based on the amount of income that we're actually making. Okay. And now, if you are in this situation and you're at 60 years old, how much do you need to have saved to be a millionaire at age 65? So if we look at this, it's $680,583. And again, I think this goes back to the data point that I mentioned at the beginning, that most people are not prepared for retirement. Because if we think about the average save for a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, and a 50-year-old, they're all very, very close to what they need to have saved in order to be a millionaire at age 65. The biggest difference is folks that are at age 60. Because again, there's very limited time for this money to compound. And frankly, there's a high likelihood that folks at 60 years old, they're not going to be getting an 8% rate of return, because they're going to need to have more money in their safe assets like bonds, because they're quickly approaching potentially needing to utilize these dollars. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, where we talked about where you might stack up from a retirement perspective and teaching you how to be in a position that when you get to retirement, you can be a millionaire too. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, add a comment below, and if you like this video, you'll probably also like the video that we did on required minimum distributions, which is a video that takes a deep dive into how to manage retirement accounts as you are approaching and in retirement. Till next time, have a great day.